Hi everyone, Dr. Piantek here. I just want to go over a few things with you as we begin the next module. So I have the course program to start at the start here, and the reason being is because it brings you right to the course calendar as well as the real leaders, and these are all of you who are doing a wonderful job putting together summaries of the chapters. So this week we are in Module 6, or for the next 2 weeks we're in Module 6. Chapter 9 was covered by Erica and Heather, and Chapter 10 was covered by Chris and Aaron. So in Module 6, you will see their videos. So go ahead and just review those videos by clicking on those videos, and we'll go into Module 6 in just a moment. For Module 7, which does not begin until the 19th of November, Debbie, Carrie, and Kristen, you'll be covering Chapter 11, and I will be covering Chapter 12. And then the remaining of the chapters we're going to sort of do at the very end of the course. But we'll worry about that a little bit later in module, in the next section. So I wanted to bring your attention to the announcements tab. So I think all of you are accessing these, maybe through your cell phone, or maybe if you're not able to open up the videos on the cell phone, it's because certain cell phones will not allow you to open up the video. So you have to actually go to the announcements tab. So every week I've been posting something. Or at least every other week, been posting something. So you can access those by clicking on the announcements tab, and some of them are really, really important. Like, for example, the DMP projects for you to review that was posted back at the beginning of October. If you go over here to the it's doctorsofnursingpractice.org, you will be able to access some of the great DNP projects that have already been published out there. So I would recommend that site because even though some of the projects that you may have reviewed don't really align with the project that you're doing, if you go to doctorsofnursingpractice.org and you set up an account, so you have to use your email and then you create a password, you can access that. It's for free. And you can actually look at some of the DMP projects that are out there by typing in a search bar of the specific topic that you're interested in. So very likely there is something that has already been done at a different facility. So you can still view your topic even though it's already been done because you're doing it at a different facility. And perhaps there's a different instrument that you're going to be using with your project. But I just wanted to reiterate the importance of really looking at other DMP projects, because when I looked over the mid-course evaluation, a common thing that was coming up is that you just don't realize what the expectations are for this course. The expectations are for you to write your Chapter 1. So in order to be proficient at that, reading up on other DMP projects, looking at their Chapter 1s, for example, comparing that to what we have here as part of our Chapter 1, so the description of the project, the review of literature, the descriptions of the technical equipment, the instruments. So you'll see a lot of these components in our previously graduated DNP students. You might also see those in other DNP projects, but really focus on that Chapter 1 component. Really read other DNP projects because that's really going to give you a good breakthrough of the aha moments of, oh, that's what she meant by description, or oh, that's what's entailed in the design. So I can't tell you how important it is to really read up on some of those other DNP projects. So with that said, let's go ahead into Forum 6, or rather our modules, Forum 6. So with the forum discussion board, there is no discussion board for Module 6 because this is the time that you are constructing your review of literature. It is a very lengthy assignment. So instead of spending time constructing an initial post and then response post to your peers for the first and second week, we're going to just not have a discussion board, and all of you will receive the points for the discussion board. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into Module 6. And like I said, I was listening to your feedback or reading your feedback with the mid-course evaluation and that you need a little bit more guidance. So again, you just access the videos from your peers here that they've constructed. They're great videos. All of you have done such a wonderful job The Hebe chapters are here, so the PowerPoints are here. A short video is here. Let's go down. We'll come back to the level of evidence in just a moment, but I want to go down and show you. I posted something in addition. So if you looked at this module before a couple of days ago, this was not in there. But what I've decided to do is just give you a little synopsis of what the literature review is, why we do it, and then a checklist. So hopefully when you go down each one of these aspects, you can check the line, okay? It's really important when you're doing your lit review that what you put in your lit review directly ties to your project. So if, for example, you do a lit review or a section of a lit review and it has nothing whatsoever to do with your project, it's just something that maybe you thought was worth mentioning, probably isn't going to fare well. You have to be able to tie what you've done with your lit review directly into your project, okay? I hope that makes sense, but it really does kind of streamline the process as to, well, why is this pertinent? Why is this information pertinent to your research project? So keep asking yourself that question as you're conducting your literature review. And again, remember, I think way back when, I recommended making an outline. When you can outline your project from beginning to end, you can start plugging in those important aspects within the lit review that does directly tie into the research, into the project that you're conducting. So I have it as a Word document down here. So you can click on that. It pops up as a Word document and you can simply print that out. So you don't have to come back to the module each time and see that you are meeting the checklist. So hopefully, when I go to grade your literature review, I will take all of this into consideration. I'll still use the rubric, but I'm going to be really looking to see that you've met all of these components. And a lot of them are very, very specific. For example, when you are crediting your resources, you're not including the credentials or the affiliations of the researchers. I'm pretty sure all of you know by at this point not to do that. But that is one component that we look for when we're doing, when we're surveying every student's chapter 1, for example. An important thing is the gaps in literature are noted. This is the reason why you're doing what you're doing. Again, it's looking at why your project is essential. It is, if you already know that this project has been done in your institution, then I would recommend doing a new project because it's already been done. Now, if you're tweaking it a little bit or maybe there's a spin to it, that's fine to do, but it has to be fresh. It has to be new. It has to be, there has to be something missing, and that's why you're doing this. Okay, so that's what the whole gap in the literature is all about. Of course, don't use first person. I think everybody knows that. And then unsupported statements by you is avoided. So you can definitely synthesize the work, the research that you have drawn from, but just avoid those opinions, okay? Avoid editorializing your review of literature. When you're synthesizing the review, the evidence and the review of literature, everything that you've researched, it's important to also cite those references so that way then the readers know where you obtained that information that you're synthesizing, okay? One other part that I really want to bring everyone's attention to is that this is not an annotated bibliography. It is so easy to get stuck in that rut to where you go from one reference and summarize it to the next reference and summarize it to the next one. And that's not what a review of literature is about. Again, go back to that outline, okay? So what you want to do is it needs to be structured. It needs to be moving from theme to theme instead of citation to citation. All right, that's really, really, really important at this point because none of you should be going from citation to citation. It really needs to focus on a theme, and then you incorporate those citations within each of the themes. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see. I don't think there's anything else that I needed to cover. Oh, I do actually. The levels of evidence. So if you remember way back when, there was this grid that had the your reference citation. It had a column for you to give a brief summary. It looked similar to like an annotated bibliography, only it had more content, and it was very where you didn't have to use necessarily complete sentences. Okay, it was basically a guide for you to keep track of your references that you're actually going to be using within your paper. And these could be references that maybe they're not pertinent for chapter 1, but they could certainly be pertinent for the second chapter. But you don't want to lose that information. That's the whole purpose of that grid. And one of the components of that grid is, and I think we call it a matrix. One of the components is the level of evidence. And so you might be thinking, well, what in the world does she mean by that? Well, this is a graph, or a chart rather, table. We'll call it a table. That's exactly what it is. That distinguishes the different levels of evidence. And there can be different forms of the level of evidence. So, for example, this one came from the Evidence-Based Nursing Guidelines, Medical Surgical Interventions, all right? It was published by Mosby Elsevier. And then if you look down here, here's the Johns Hopkins Nursing Evidence-Based Practice Level of Evidence. They're relatively about the same, but depending upon who writes it and the publisher, they can be very different, all right? So for example, here, level 3 is, they give the example of a quasi-experimental. Well, here, the Johns Hopkins Nursing Evidence-Based Practice gives level 2, the quasi-experimental study. So it can be very confusing, but the reason that I have several different ones here is that all you have to do is choose one that makes sense to you, okay? So, you know, this third one might make sense to everybody, whereas, you know, perhaps the first one makes sense to one or two of you. So you just choose which one makes sense to you. And when you write your matrix up, you can say, well, this particular reference citation uses the level 2 level of evidence, and here's why. And then you explain why you came to the conclusion that it is the level 2 in that level of evidence. So if it helps, go back to that matrix, take a look at it, take a look at your references, and for each reference, decide which level of evidence, but stick with one of these three. Or if you find another one, make sure that when you turn in your matrix, you turn in the levels. You turn in either like the table, like this is a table, or the explanation like this is, or this is another table. So that way then when I'm looking at your matrix, I can see, oh yes, you know, you did understand which level that particular reference falls into. So if you have questions about that, please don't hesitate to contact me. But again, these three things, this works with that matrix that you, I believe it was module 2 that it was introduced. So just go back to that module, pull up that matrix. If time permits, I think I'm running out of time, but let's just go ahead and take a peek. I guess I think it is in module 2, if my memory serves me correctly. And then also, while this is loading, I just wanted to bring to your attention that no discussion board. Your review of literature will be due in a couple of weeks, in 2 weeks. Okay, so keep working on that. Use the librarians. They are a great resource. They can help you with keywords. So yes, in module 2, as you see, the level of evidence with specific details, how you came up to this conclusion of why it is that level, is mentioned here. And again, you can download that by clicking on this link here that brings you to a Word document. And then you can add in the information here. This, I believe, is not due until, it's not due now. I believe it's due in module 7 or module 8. So, but I just wanted to bring this to your attention because it's really important to keep working, to keep going through. don't stop during this course, because if you stop, you get into a rut and it's hard to bounce out of it. So let me know if you have questions. Thanks.